Hello everyone, welcome to another one of these collection videos, and as you can see, this time we'll be talking about Rocky. It's a series that has always had a very special place in my heart. Growing up, it was always around. It was such a huge influence. I did a lot of sports in middle school and high school, particularly cross country, track, that kind of stuff, and eventually got into a lot of weightlifting. And the soundtracks to Rocky 1 through 4 in particular were mainstays all the time, either in the gym or on the bus on the way to meets. It was always just like those were the go-to pump-up songs that were such a big part of that huge portion of my life, and we'd watch these movies with friends over and over again, countless times in my teenage years. Rocky, again, particularly 1 to 4, were just always around. They were a huge, huge part of my teenage years. And on top of that, it probably helped that I grew up, I've spent most of my life living in the area around Philadelphia. Of course, been to the Philadelphia Art Museum and seen the statue and whatever, probably 15 times over the years, that kind of thing. Like, it was just such a huge part of the lives of so many people that I knew growing up, to where it was almost like the character of Rocky was almost like a real person. It was weird, obviously it's the actor Sylvester Stallone, but in this area, there's something about Rocky where it has risen to this point of mythology in a weird way. It's hard to explain, especially if you're not from around here, but Rocky is a big deal. It is more than just a movie franchise in the area where I grew up, and it's been just such a huge part of my life that I've always loved these movies, seen them countless times. And we'll start off the collection here with this is a look at VHS. This is a slightly different version than the ones that I grew up with. This is a box set that one of the later VHS box sets. I had a slightly different one growing up, and friends all had different versions, and we just watched these over and over again. But VHS 1 through 5, and then moving on to CED. Really enjoy these covers. These were some of the first CEDs that I watched. These are some of the handful that I've actually watched more than once in that format. We have Rocky, Rocky II, and those are my two favorites. Go ahead and talk about that a little bit. Rocky 1 and 2 for me. Rocky is of course, the ultimate classic in the series, and Rocky 2 is such a great, perfect second part to that story because there are some unfinished elements. Rocky obviously stands on its own, the first one completely, but there are some things like the future of Rocky and Adrian, the fact that Rocky lost that fight, he went the distance, but there was obviously, even at the very end, you could tell that there was going to be people that would disagree and think that Rocky won. And whether or not that was important to the story needed to be explored, and what was going on with that. And Rocky 2, I think, really explored all those elements. And my favorite part of Rocky is Rocky and Adrian and their relationship. And Rocky 2 did such a great job exploring that and the aftermath of that fight and leading up to Rocky 2, that final fight. And Rocky, I think, for a lot of people that haven't really seen them and just kind of know about the training montages and that kind of stuff, most of the Rocky movies, the real good ones, most of them have no fighting in them. Most of them are really, especially 1 and 2, which are my favorites, are kind of more like a drama for the most part, with very little action. Then you get the build-up of a big training montage, and then the huge fight at the end. But there's actually very little boxing in the ring in the first couple of Rockies. It gets more so towards, we get like Rocky IV, it's like over half the movie is a training montage. But the first two are absolutely my favorites, and there are just a very, very short list of movies that still make me cry every time I see them, no matter how many times I've watched them over and over again. And Rocky 2 is one of those movies, one of that short handful, probably count on one hand the number of movies that still do that. But Rocky 2 in particular has been just such a huge part of my life that I still such a great emotional attachment to it, and I will always, always shed a tear at the end of that movie. Rocky 3 on CED. And then I have Rocky IV on Laserdisc. Rocky is pretty common to get on Laserdisc. 1 through 5 are on Laserdisc, and there's many different releases and versions of Rocky 1 through 5 released in countries all over the world. I just have Rocky IV. Rocky IV on CED. 4 was the last one released on CED, and it is very uncommon, hard to get your hands on. And I went with just getting a Laserdisc for that one, because I wanted at least one of the Rocky movies on Laserdisc, so I thought that was kind of a good way to complete that. Get Rocky IV on Laserdisc. Rocky IV, I know, is a love it or hate it kind of movie, because again, unlike Rocky 1 and 2 and 3 to an extent, it leaves a lot of the grounded, realistic, dramatic elements behind, and it becomes this over-the-top, super 80s, super macho, unbelievably, like, almost to the level of cartoonish. And it's just very removed, again, from the reality of 1, 2, and 3. And that's sort of is it the jumping the shark moment and you don't like it? Or, for me, I love it because of that. I don't like it as much as 1 and 2, but it is my third favorite because I actually adore the over-the-top, ridiculous, just unbelievably set in the 80s that this movie is. It's become, in a way, you could almost say, with the number of training montages and the music and the, knock you over the head allegories for the Cold War and things like that, it's become almost a parody of itself, but at the same time, I find it to be unbelievably enjoyable. I will never get tired of Rocky IV. It'll always be one of my favorites, just because I love those elements. But I can definitely see why some people don't like 4. But I like 4 because of the reasons that a lot of people don't. Moving on to DVD, 2 different versions here. We have this box set, which this version has been released in a couple different looking at like outer box sets. This collection, there's a red one here, and there's an older one that had more of the American flag kind of look on this, like around the box. A couple different versions, but this is cool because it matches my VHS box set, so I thought that was kind of a neat one to grab. And I really like this one as far as DVD. I like the covers on this one. I like the quality of these releases, so I really enjoy this DVD collection as far as a box set. There are a bunch of different options for Rocky on DVD and Blu-ray and everything. Every format it's released on, it's been released on a couple of times, but I enjoyed that. Then we have a Rocky 6 film collection, because this one is 1 to 5. So 4 movies I really enjoy, and a 5th one that maybe occasionally I'll watch, but my least favorite in the series, and this one includes all of those. And then it also includes Rocky Balboa, which Rocky Balboa, won't get too much into here, but I have very mixed feelings about it. I was actually surprised how much I enjoyed it when I saw it in theaters. I was really kind of hesitant to see it, but as much as I enjoyed it, there were some things I dislike. And as I say too, my favorite element of Rocky is the Rocky and Adrian relationship. It's always what I've loved, and of course she's not in there, so that kind of was a downside for me. I always, the funny story is that I grew up loving Rocky 1 and 2, just absolutely adoring them and watching the heck out of Rocky 3 and 4. And then, who did I marry? A little Italian woman with short brown hair, glasses, who works at a pet store. So, Rocky 1 and 2 has had a big effect on my life, apparently. Then on Blu-ray, I picked out just the favorite Rockies that I have. I do that a lot with Blu-ray because I've been collecting so many older media formats I've enjoyed for years, and I usually prefer them. So for a lot of things with movies or even TV series or whatever, I usually have everything I want on DVD, and then Laserdisc and VHS and all these old formats, and maybe 2 different versions as you see here on DVD. So Blu-ray I usually reserve for kind of like a best of, like my favorite season of a TV show or in a movie franchise, just my favorite ones. So that's what I have here. I have Rocky, Blu-ray DVD combo version of that, and Rocky 2, my 2 favorites, just a perfect duology. I'm glad the series went beyond there because I really like it, but it could have ended at 2 and just been perfect and done. And then Rocky IV. Again, I love the over-the-top cheesiness. I love the, I enjoy so much 80s stuff. I've always been just like drowning in 80s things, to where I grew up at the tail end, I was born at the tail end of the 80s and grew up mostly in the 90s, but most of my experience at rental stores, whether it's movies, video games, a lot of stuff I watched on TV. I mean, I was really saturated in 1980s stuff during the first, throughout the 90s. So I really enjoy the over-the-top 80s elements of Rocky IV. So that one is just one that I will put on for enjoyment all the time. It's my favorite training montages, all of them. Love it. Just a fun movie, but for more serious, grounded drama, of course, 1 and 2 are my favorites. I do like 3 a lot. I know it's definitely a favorite, but I've never liked it quite as much as 1 and 2, and it's missing that almost silly fun element of 4. Then the last part of the collection here, we're going back to DVD. As I said, Rocky 1 and 2, some of my favorite movies ever, and have just been a huge influence on my life over the years. So I have a couple different versions of that. I have a different DVD version of Rocky II than the one I have in the set. It's a different release. And then I have 2 different versions of this release of Rocky. This is the 2-disc collector's edition, and this has a crazy number of extra features, so you can see a little bit of that. I mean, hours and hours and hours of stuff looking at the first Rocky movie, and I really like this edition. Watch this, as the ultimate guide here, the movie, and then just a ton of extra features. There's a lot to dig into here. So I really have enjoyed that version over the years. As far as the original Rocky, it's between that version and the Blu-ray that I'll watch the most if I put it on. And then I actually have a sealed promo version of that from before that came out. And then, of course, this came out and has the ticket for Balboa. But yeah, so that is a look at my collection for the Rocky franchise. A series that I will never get tired of, as my wife can attest to. I really enjoy it. Doesn't matter the format. I like all of these. I enjoy all the movies. 5 is my least favorite, then probably Balboa, then moving on to Rocky 3, then 4, then 1 and 2 are really close up there, but 2 just has that edge. It struck the right chord with me at the right age, and I've always loved it. So this is Rocky. I'd love to hear what some of your favorites are and what your experience with the series has been over the years. And as always, if you have a collection of your own, link me to the video. I'd love to check it out.